we do. So yeah, it's going to be a tough one, but I know I gotta work hard. It's going to be a tough race. So cheers,
we'll let you get into it. Thanks, Lando. Best of luck today with 10 minutes to go till, or just over 10 minutes to go till lights out. Let's go to Ted. What more can you tell us about the Red Bull changes to the rear wing?
Well, Simon, as Toto Wolff says, it's the third race in a row after Austin, Mexico, and now here in Brazil that Red Bull have had to make changes to their rear wing between qualifying, or just before qualifying, going into qualifying, and then the race. So it's starting to look like some sort of habit going on, but it's a different change here in Brazil than the ones they've had before. So here in Brazil, they've actually changed the rear wing upper flap. That's the bit where it says Honda on it, and the flap rear wing snubber. Now, it's a great word, a snubber, isn't it? What is it? A snubber is actually a slot gap separator. So if you look at the N of Honda, just underneath that, there's a little separator, and there's one on the either side as well, which makes sure that the gap, the slot gap between the rear wing main plane, that's the bit that doesn't say Honda on it, and the rear wing upper flap, which is new, which does say Honda on it, is actually there. So that's the bit. But of course, in Austin and Mexico, as we see an improvised human wall from the chief engineer here and the chief mechanic, so nothing to hide here, lads, eh? That means that actually it was on the previous failures they had was where the rear wing main plane meets the end plate. So this is a different thing, but what Mercedes is effectively saying, Simon, is this points towards some sort of systematic damage or flaw perhaps in the Red Bull rear wing, and they're likening it to the problem they had, where they had damage to their rear wing, and that led to a disqualification for Lewis Hamilton from qualifying. Of course, it's not quite the same thing, because the Red Bull rear wing, how delicate it might be, does pass all the tests, whereas of course Hamilton's didn't. So that's the rear wing story. It shouldn't affect Verstappen in the race, as far as we know.
And I've got Christian again, just to get a response to this. Christian, Toto is not happy that you've been able to make changes to your rear wing again. Can you explain what is going on exactly, and does he have a right to be upset?
I've got no idea what you're referring to. Well,
as far as we understand, they've made changes to the upper flap on the rear wing of Max's car and the rear wing snubber. That's what's happened.
I think what you're referring to, they're perfectly permitted. If you see something from a reliability point of view, if you request permission from the stewards or from the technical delegate, you get permission to change it. It's like the study changed in his engine last week. So, you know, it's very different. I think he's just trying to throw a bit of shade because, you know, it's a very different thing to not passing a test.
Why does that part keep coming up though in part Fermi? Sorry? Why does that part keep coming up needing change in the under part Fermi?
I think that you know, we saw an issue with it, you know, in FP3. So we've just been keeping an eye on it, and it's obviously has a lot of stress at a circuit like this. So you just want to make sure that everything's fine for the race.
Thanks, best of luck. Appreciate it, Christian. Let's go to the Sky Pack quickly. Anthony on starts.
Well, either way, Simon, Max will be hoping for a better start today than he had yesterday. Just watch his head. This 1G of deceleration, because the gears weren't in sync, allowed Bottas to slip through on the inside. If we go to Ocon from yesterday, this is where Lewis Hamilton's going to be starting the race from P10 today. Ocon gets to the outside. This is where Lewis is going to be aiming for, because as Ricciardo proves, on the inside, you get overtaken around that outside and pushed out wide on the exit of turn 2. So it's all to play for here in Interlagos at the start.
Johnny, if you were Max Verstappen, how would you position your car aiming for the first run in the Center S's?
Well, again, it's all going to be down to that initial launch when you go off the line. Then you've just got to work out what is the risk factor that is happening with Valtteri, who's going to probably be on your right-hand side. So it's really going to be down to then, if he's not ahead, of getting then the momentum when he goes down the S centre curbs all the way through the S's, so he can maybe give it a shot up the inside at turn 4. But that's getting a bit risky.
Just had a quick word with Christian, who says they haven't actually made any of those changes. Again, we're just trying to work out what's happened. Either way, that's for discussion after the race. Let's build towards what is happening here on the grid and talk about finally Lewis Hamilton and what he's got to do, how he has got to get the best out of that Mercedes in these hot conditions.
He's got to have one of those exceptional races that he often has. He'll be pumped, he'll be ready for it.
Yeah.
There we go then, we're all set here. Thanks Johnny and Paul for the moment. Valtteri Bottas is on pole position. Max Verstappen alongside, and Lewis Hamilton starting from 10th ahead of the Sao Paulo Grand Prix.
For me, one of the best things about life is that we keep moving forward. We discover exciting new technologies, redefine who we are and how we want to lead our lives. Basically, we choose what we want our future to look like. So what's yours going to be?
Jerry's here! Jerry! Mate, how are you?
It's so good to see you.
Good to see all of you, yeah.
Why is Jerry so popular? It's been like this ever since we started using Workday. What do you mean? It makes it easier to develop great relationships with our suppliers. Now, everyone, everywhere loves Jerry. They sure do. They do. They really do.
Workday. Finance, HR, planning, and spend management for a changing world.
For those of you watching F1 on Sky Q, the Sky Race Recap allows you to quickly catch up on all the key moments from a Grand Prix weekend. So if you join late and have missed any of the action or simply want to go back and watch the best bits once again, then you can. All you have to do is hit the red button on your remote and select Race Recap. A timeline of events will appear that you can navigate through, including the start, overtakes and all the crucial moments. So whether it's before, during or after the race, Sky Sports F1 is the go-to destination for all the best F1 news, views and action. Right now, over on Sky Sports Cricket, the T20 World Cup final between New Zealand and Australia. But here on Sky Sports F1, we are ready for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix.
Well, he might not have scored any points in the sprint yesterday, whilst Max Verstappen extended his lead at the top of the table, but that brilliant drive from 20th to 5th in 24 laps showed very much that Lewis Hamilton isn't prepared to loosen his grip on that championship trophy just yet. Today's task from 10th has got to be as high as he can possibly get in 71 laps and reduce that 21 points arrears. Welcome from Interlagos. We're between lakes today, and it's the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, the 38th World Championship Grand Prix to take place here at Interlagos. A brand new name where Pole has won on this track 15 times in the previous 37 races, and they've taken place in the majority around this 2.67 mile circuit. A top speed of 217 miles an hour, average speed of 136 miles an hour. You take your lap distance at full throttle for 74% of the lap. Iconic corners everywhere you look. The center S's, turn 1, Alonso, Webber and Massa, 3 abreast going into that corner in 2012 with a Ferrari coming out on top. This is turn 4, on board with Bruno Senna in the Williams. That's Sebastian Vettel on the right-hand side, being sent into a spin and very nearly ruining Sebastian Vettel's championship that season. At turns 11 and 12, Maguglio and Junsao. Lando Norris on Charles Leclerc, pushing the Ferrari wide to the edge of the track as he battled his way past, and today Lando Norris starting just one place ahead of Charles Leclerc on the grid. The tyre compound compounds have gone a step softer than the last time he raced here in 2019, and the track temperatures 20 degrees hotter than they were for the sprint yesterday. Will the soft tyres be risked? Here's the starting grid then. Valtteri Bottas, for the third time in 4 races, is on pole, alongside Max Verstappen, who's only won 1 of his last 7 starts from second. Carlos Sainz starts third, where he finished in the race 2 years ago. Sergio Perez alongside him on the second row. Lando Norris, birthday yesterday, 5th on the grid, alongside Charles Leclerc for Ferrari, who matches his average starting position this season. It's 7th for Pierre Gasly, 8th for Esteban Ocon, his best ever start in Brazil. Sebastian Vettel starts 9th for the 4th time in his career. Lewis Hamilton starts 10th on the grid. Daniel Ricciardo just behind him, starts 11th for the 3rd race in a row, and this time alongside Fernando Alonso. It's Antonio Giovinazzi who starts 13th ahead of Lance Stroll, his highest ever start in Brazil. Yuki Tsunoda is 15th ahead of Nicholas Latifi, who out-qualified his teammate George Russell for the 2nd sprint in a row. Russell is 17th alongside the Haas driver Mick Schumacher. Schumacher is ahead of his Haas teammate Nikita Mazepin. Kimi Raikkonen's changed his rear wing. It's a different specification. He starts from the pit lane for the first time ever here in Interlagos, where the sun is out. The fans have been queuing round the block since the first light this morning, and they can't wait, Martin Brundle, for the next 71 laps. I can't wait, and I'm sure you're a bit eager to get it underway too.
Well, if the sprint was anything to go by, it should be an absolute thriller, and we'll see how they do now when they've got 3 times more fuel on board. It's quite a bit hotter, as you've heard in the pre-show and on the grid, and Lewis has got to pass fast cars like young Carlos Sainz here in the Ferrari. Had a very good day yesterday, and Lando Norris too, but surely one of his biggest challenges should be getting past the Red Bull of Sergio Perez, assuming he can get that far, but yesterday's form suggested he'll be sailing through them for a while, but he has got to keep his front tyres intact today with a higher fuel load and following faster cars.
I did say, I wonder who's going to risk taking a set of soft tyres today. Yuki Tsunoda is the only one on the grid of the 19 cars starting on the grid, 20 if you include Kimi Raikkonen from the pit lane, who starts on the soft, the rest all on the medium tyre.
And the weird thing about today is 10 of those 20 drivers have 2 sets of hard compound tyres, which is expected to be the favoured race tyre, and they're only allocated 2 for the weekend. So that means they haven't been out on them at any point. The first time they'll run the white marked hard tyres will be in the race of those 10 drivers. But Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll don't have any new hard tyres available to them, for example.
Now, you mentioned this on your grid walk, that there's shade, as you can see there, for a lot of the drivers starting on the right-hand side of the grid. Does that make a difference at the start, the fact that that part of the track could be cooler?
I think, yes, it will, of course. It's all about heat management, isn't it? We know that these tyres like to be around 100 degrees on the surface, and the clutches and all that. But did you get that little gem I said on the grid? I picked up those tyres, those tyres that are in the sun might be able to be bled down more than those that are in the shade, which the teams are desperate to get the tyre pressures down, and Pirelli are desperate to keep them up for the integrity of the tyre.
So we'll see what happens. There's the Drivers' Championship then. It's a 21-point lead now for Max Verstappen after he scored 2 points in the sprint yesterday. Lewis Hamilton, we can ride on board with him down the Retta Aposta. His Mercedes team 2 points ahead of Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. Valtteri Bottas starting on pole then. He's the only pole sitter in the last 7 races here at Interlagos that hasn't gone on to win the race. He would dearly love to end that particular record this afternoon, but does he need to control this race? Because if Max Verstappen does get ahead at the start, will he be too quick for the rest to catch?
Well, of course, he passed Max by having a softer tyre on board yesterday, but it's such a short run to the first corner. In Mexico, Mercedes were quite slow, as Lewis was to get on the grid yesterday, actually. Quite slow, and left the Mercedes on the front row of the grid for a long time. But it looks like Max is in pretty close company with him.
Every vantage point taken around this circuit, that rooftop terrace is a hotel that is outside the confines of the track. and everyone's got their camera phones ready for the start of this race. It is great to be back here in Sao Paulo. It's Kimi Raikkonen's last time, of course, racing here at Interlagos, a circuit where he's finished on the podium 8 times before, but never actually won here. He's going to come out into the sunshine in a moment, starting from the pit lane. And as you can see already, the top 4, 5, 6 are waiting on the grid, and there's a big gap waiting for Lewis Hamilton to get onto the grid in 10th spot.
Well, it worked well for him yesterday, didn't it? He arrived on the grid with very weak tyres and immediately passed 4 or 5 cars heading down to the first corner. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Here this afternoon. That's the from Carlos Sainz, Ferrari, Max Verstappen to his left-hand side. He needs, will Bottas lead them away into the center S's. 71 laps to come here at Interlagos. And we're ready, and we are set for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. It's round 19, it's lights out, away we go. Bottas gets away well ahead of Verstappen, but Verstappen is coming back at him, and Lando Norris touches, and he's got a puncture on his rear left tyre as he clashed with a Ferrari. Verstappen takes the lead. He squeezed out Valtteri Bottas going through turn 2. Perez is in third, then comes the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc as we head down the Reta Aposta now, and he's getting a decent slipstream. It's Charles Leclerc, but he's been forced over to the left-hand side as Verstappen leads from Bottas, from Perez, Leclerc, and then Sainz, and Bottas the two Ferraris going wide out, Bottas as well. Bottas wide. It's a Red Bull 1-2 there, so down into the tricky braking zone. It's downhill into turn 4, and Valtteri Bottas defending hard, but somehow they all made it through there. Sadly for Lando Norris, he's got the entire lap to go with a puncture.
Hamilton is up to 7th. We saw him through Ferradura, passing there Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri, and Gasly's now under pressure from Esteban Ocon. They're racing wheel to wheel, going into the next turn, and almost touching wheels and letting Daniel Ricciardo through on the inside. It's Red Bull 1 and 2 then. Ricciardo ahead of Ocon. Bottas is third. Then comes Leclerc. He's coming back for some more. Is Esteban Ocon on Daniel Ricciardo at Junsao, and very nearly squeezed through.
Might just be a puncture. I'll try and get back. Let's try and get back.
It looked to be more than just a puncture for Lando Norris. Big contact there with the Ferrari as Verstappen leads them over the line. There goes Lewis Hamilton on Sebastian Vettel. Hamilton in 1 lap from 10th is up to 6th. Ocon is now ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, and you can see the Alpine ahead of the papaya orange McLaren going through the center S's. But look at the gap that Max Verstappen has got on the rest already.
Yeah, it's a very, very nice first lap for Lewis Hamilton, but Valtteri Bottas then is not in the position Mercedes need him to be to control the race at the front.
Hamilton putting pressure now on Carlos Sainz. No DRS for the first couple of laps. He doesn't want to get stuck in that DRS train that we saw yesterday when the DRS system is turned on. He has given it absolutely everything to make up as many places as he can in the space of 2 laps. As in comes Lando Norris. And this could be a slightly lengthier pit stop than we're expecting from everyone else, but the crew do very well to change the tyres, put him onto the hard compound tyre. Only 6 seconds really. Stationary stop for Lando Norris. He's back out into the race, but he is last behind Kimi Raikkonen as we ride on board now with Lewis Hamilton. Let's look at the straight line speed of this Mercedes. It's 1.2 kilometres, full throttle, full blast, all the way to turn 1, and he is gaining in the slipstream of Carlos Sainz. Pulls over to the inside. Sainz isn't going to fight that one, and Hamilton, if he is to win this race in the space of 2 laps, has half the arrears that he needs to.
And that tells you everything you need to know about how this race might play out. He has got the speed. He could come off turn 12 at the bottom of the hill. Car was moving around a lot, but still it was comfortably enough to get past the Ferrari.
Let's look at this race start again. I thought Bottas got away the better, but Verstappen quickly came at him. Opportunist move from Norris, trying to go around the outside of Carlos Sainz, and the 2 very good friends got a lot closer than they really intended.
Yeah, I think Lando drifted a little bit left there as he probably thought he'd cleared his old teammate, and we'll see now. We'll get a very good picture. So Sainz is gone right to cover him off. Difficult to see on that angle.
Yeah, I could do nothing, for example, there. I got twist.
The stewards have decided no investigation necessary for that incident.
Let's have a look from this might be an easier one to get a reference point on it. So Sainz had a poor start. That's why Norris has gone around the outside of the and then Lando thought he'd cleared the Ferrari, I think, and just started to ease back onto the track. Didn't want to be on the dirty part of the racetrack that would be completely unused up there at any point, any longer than he had to be. And this then down to turn 4, Bottas defending. He then switches to the right. He's got quite an acute angle, actually. Turns in, the front won't stick at that speed. The 2 Ferraris and the AlphaTauri off the road as well for good measure.
And this is Lewis Hamilton's start. He has cleared not 1 but 2 Ferraris now, and he's up into 4th place. He didn't go for the outside, there was no room through, and he went down the inside instead and still got the overtake done.
Yeah, nice and neat and tidy down there. There's grass flying up everywhere, isn't there? So Lewis keeping himself out of danger then. By being on the inside, you're less likely to get caught up in somebody else's shunt.
So Hamilton, this is the replay of him getting past Carlos Sainz going into turn 1. You can just see there Charles Leclerc ahead of him at that particular moment. Yuki Tsunoda on the inside of Lance Stroll, and he's lost bodywork. And I wonder if there's damage to the Aston Martin too. Yuki Tsunoda going down the inside, but there just wasn't the space, and that's a lot of bodywork coming off there.
He was not looking at all.
I think it's a touch over ambitious, that move, but a lot of debris on the racetrack. A lot of debris, and already then this Bottas has let Hamilton through.
He has. Hamilton is up into 3rd place. Good spot, Martin. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
Pit Yuki Tsunoda. They're going to pit Yuki Tsunoda for new tyres and a new front wing. But if there's any consolation for Lando Norris's McLaren guys, it's relatively undamaged. So he should be able to make it up. The diffuser and everything on the floor looked fine when he passed me in the pits.
He took it very, very steady, going round almost a full lap with a punctured rear left tyre, and he saved the damage. But there's no front wing, lost completely for Yuki Tsunoda.
Surely lost some of the barge board on the right-hand side as well.
That debris down at turn 1, we'll get another look at it, I'm sure, in a moment, Martin, but is it on the racing line? Does it need sweeping away, or are they going to leave it there for the rest of the race?
It wouldn't surprise me if they put out a safety car to put the pack all together so they get a chance to clean that up. But, you know, cars have already passed through that zone once now, but getting a puncture with all those shards of carbon fibre is pretty easy.
Max Verstappen then leads 1.4 second the gap between Verstappen and Perez. The man who is on the charge is Lewis Hamilton from 10th up to 3rd now, and he's just under 5 seconds behind. We're watching Pierre Gasly making his way through turn 1. You can see the debris. It's not on the racing line. It is just to the right-hand side of it. Gasly, as it stands, down in 8th. Sebastian Vettel ahead of him. The 2 Ferraris, 5th and 6th, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, as we watch Sebastian Vettel lead Gasly through Decido de Largo, and there's Daniel Ricciardo coming at Esteban Ocon, who's in 9th place, and we can see Hamilton now. Sorry, Bottas.
So invert the cars in turn 1.
Yes, we can see Hamilton eventually. That was Valtteri slowing down and obeying those team orders.
Yes, and he had to slow down a lot, didn't he?
Thank you, Valtteri, says Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, that's cost him a few seconds, Valtteri Bottas, but Mercedes needed to make that switch quickly.
Need to make it safety car. Yeah, as I expected. A lot of shards out there. And that plays beautifully into Hamilton's hands and Mercedes' hands with the speed they've got up the pit straight, because, I'm going to assume straight away that Max Verstappen, safety car deployed, so obviously not virtual safety car, and there it is. I'm going to assume Max Verstappen will not want to restart until he gets almost to the finish line, unless he thinks he can bolt at the bottom of the hill, because he doesn't want to leave Perez exposed to being out-dragged up the hill by Lewis Hamilton.
Well, Max Verstappen won from pole last time we were here at Interlagos, and he had to survive a couple of safety car restarts on that particular day. So he'll have it prepared in his mind, he'll have experience as well, but we saw some dramatic restarts once the safety car had gone away. And we've got yet another safety car here at Interlagos, and this is the reason why. He dived down the inside, Yuki Tsunoda. To me, Lance Stroll had every right to close the door, because Tsunoda was never ahead.
Yeah, it was over ambitious. I think I'll stick with that comment. He thought it was a lunge. He's on those soft tyres, wanted to make them work, but it wasn't worth doing that. at the start of this race.
George Russell makes a pit stop behind the safety car. You don't lose quite as much time. It's about 14 seconds your net loss when you pit behind the safety car as opposed to at full racing speed. And the safety car, Ted Kravitz, is going to lead the field through the pit lane.
Hello again, safety car. When was the last time we saw him?
Ooh, this is the 13th time. This is the 13th race this season where we've had a safety car or a virtual safety car.
A safety car, period. We've had multiple in some races.
Yes.
Seems like ages since we last had one. So that's tactical for George Russell with the tyre change. Just seeing another car come into the pits. This time it is Yuki Tsunoda, but that is just because he's ahead of the safety car tail, if you see what I mean. So this will be interesting while the safety car leads everybody through. They're a lap down, Yuki and Lando. Team radio. Yeah, so everyone's, of course, the lapped cars have to go through the pit lane before the safety car gets here. But Lance Stroll, it looks like he's going to make a pit stop. He has sustained a significant amount of damage in that contact with Tsunoda.
And we'll keep an eye out. I mean, it's very early in the race, isn't it, to think of a pit stop for the leaders, and certainly Red Bull are not thinking about it. They've gone through, but it's too early in the race. It would just mess the strategy up, wouldn't it, if you had to throw a set of tyres away now and put you, of course, right at the back of the crocodile.
Plus the fact, if you came in through the pit lane and stops, you would lose quite a few places while the rest of the field all made their way through that pit lane. This is a replay. Lap 1, the start for Sergio Perez. He's watching his teammate push Valtteri Bottas wide, legitimately as well. Bottas got a better reaction time, but Verstappen was right with him going into turn 1. And now we see, Martin, Bottas's troubles going through Decido de Largo.
Yes, and he couldn't quite come back to the racing line, carried too much speed in, front tyres complained, and that was a gift for Red Bull at that stage. They could have done well without this safety car, Red Bull, and of course it's caused by the sister team, AlphaTauri.
He would have still had dust, wouldn't he, on his tyres, Valtteri Bottas, and being pushed wide, and that wouldn't have helped him.
Yes, let's go.
Well, the thoroughbred having the reins loosened and the charges on, but he's been held back a little bit behind the safety car at the moment. There's debris just past turn 1. That if you leave that there for the rest of the race, someone can easily pick up a puncture. It's not in a good place at all. So the safety car is out while the marshals just sweep away all the debris on the track, and the reason they're going through the pit lane is because that allows the marshals clear passage to do just that.
Absolutely right, and I think if they were going to have picked up a puncture, even a slow puncture in the debris, it would be showing up by now, anybody out there. But how far did Kimi Räikkönen get up? He started in the pit lane, he's up to 17th at the moment, mostly because of a shunt for Norris and Tsunoda and Russell pitting.
Yeah, exactly. So we can go through the pit lane once again. So this is the second time through the pit lane. With Bernd Maylander at the helm of the Mercedes GTR, Richard Darker alongside him. Bernd Maylander, he's probably led more laps of a Grand Prix than most of the drivers on the grid currently.
Absolutely. And they'll all have to stick to the 80 kilometres per hour, 50 miles per hour speed limit. Otherwise, you'll get a penalty in the race if you're an F1 car.
Through they come.
Once again, if the safety car was speeding through the pit lane. But presumably, he's sitting on a rev limiter, a pit lane limiter like everybody else.
Quite. So far in this race then, Esteban Ocon, who started 8th, dropped back a couple of places and managed to get ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. Nikita Mazepin has passed Mick Schumacher in the Haas battle. He's currently 14th, Schumacher 15th. Norris had the puncture after tangling with Carlos Sainz, and that's why he's right down at the bottom. Tsunoda tangled with Lance Stroll. He's currently running 19th, and George Russell 18th. Christian Horner, Red Bull team boss, is on the pit wall. Well, dream start with you running 1 and 2, but the safety car, Christian, we imagine is not really what you wanted at this moment.
No, it's good, obviously, to have both cars up there. So the safety car's in this lap, so I'm going to have to get back to it in a second. But yeah, Hamilton's looking pretty ominous out there, but we've got to get our heads down, get into the race, and do the best restart we can.
Christian, we'll be back with you in a little while. Thank you very much. Safety car is ending then. So let's go back to where Max Verstappen gets his foot down. Somewhere close to the line not to give people the chance to get the slipstream into turn 1.
Well, Anthony at Sky Race Control telling me drivers are being warned, don't forget your brakes are going to be cold when you steam into turn 1. I think Max will try to judge this to see if he can bolt. He's got the benefit of his teammate behind him, but he doesn't want to leave his teammate exposed. They could do with being talking to each other at the moment, but I'm going to assume Max will wait almost to the finish line so that he doesn't give a massive slipstream to the Mercedes-Benz team, and they will have talked about this before the race started.
Hamilton's itching to go here. Perez has got a defending job to do to try and keep the Mercedes at bay. When does Max Verstappen go? They're all trying to get temperature into their tyres. Hamilton is just hanging on to that rear wing of Sergio Perez. As Perez weaves around a bit, Hamilton is stalking him, Bottas behind, and then the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc ahead of Carlos Sainz. We're edging now to where the grid is, and Verstappen hasn't gone yet, but he's gone now. And Sergio Perez follows him, and Valtteri Bottas gets into the slipstream of Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton to the slipstream of Perez. Big lock up there. I think it was from Hamilton as they go through turn 1. Round the outside, Valtteri Bottas under pressure from Charles Leclerc. Verstappen's got the job done, and he's got the job done very well as Lando Norris gets past Yuki Tsunoda. To the Retro-Aposta we go now, and Bottas picking up a great slipstream, having to defend though from Charles Leclerc. He's not making a move on Lewis Hamilton for obvious reasons after they let the teammates swap around just a couple of laps ago.
The two Red Bulls are working harder at warming their tyres up there. Lewis just wanted absolute position on the left rear wheel of Sergio Perez, and he's struggling a little bit. The Red Bulls have fired their tyres up more quickly.
It wasn't Hamilton that locked up. Maybe one of the two Ferraris as they went towards turn 1. Bottas under pressure from Charles Leclerc, very nearly lost out through Ferradura, but already a 1.3 second advantage for Max Verstappen over his teammate Sergio Perez, as through on the inside goes Yuki Tsunoda on Nicholas Latifi in the Williams. There we see Kimi Raikkonen right behind the Haas of Mick Schumacher as he makes up places. He's now running in 16th, and along the main straight we go now. Hamilton gaining on Sergio Perez, little bit too far behind to make the move into turn 1. The stewards are going to look at that collision between Yuki Tsunoda and Lance Stroll.
That amazing straight line speed surely is going to come into play for Hamilton. He's got a new motor, got full power in there, and it's working well, we know, all through the weekend, but somehow Perez needs to concentrate through the middle part of the lap, keep it calm, don't let that car slide, and just get a tremendous exit off turn 12. But if Hamilton breezes past Perez, I can't see why he wouldn't breeze past the other Red Bull as well.
What Red Bull need here is Max Verstappen to keep Sergio Perez in DRS range, and Mick Schumacher's got a problem. His front wing underneath the car, and he's going to have to try and nurse that back to the pits. And that could easily come loose and leave a bit more debris on the track. But what I was going to say is, if Verstappen can keep Perez within a second of him, or Perez can keep within a second of Verstappen, he's less vulnerable to attack from the Mercedes behind, because he'll have the DRS.
Yeah. That'd be
Oh, there it goes.
Is it still in the car?
It's like under the car, I think.
More debris. Did it? Where did that land? More debris. It's not finished yet, I think. What's this all about then? Oh. Yeah. So he's side by side there. Little touch. Gets a bit trigger happy with the throttle, and that's where the wing's gone. Bit of understeer, bit of oversteer. Has to correct the steering, and ends up in the side of the Alfa Romeo.
So we had a virtual safety car. Sorry, Martin. It is now clear, the section of track where the wing came out, but we are still under this virtual safety car.
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? So now
it's not clear. It's clear in sector 9, but we've obviously got a piece of debris still on the track.
So now Perez has got a different problem. It's not the safety car, where Max becomes the de facto safety car when he's allowed to hold the pack, and it'll end when it ends, the virtual safety car, wherever they happen to be on the racetrack once they've cleared the debris away. And you have to say Perez looks significantly more under pressure now in terms of track position. Ted's in the pit lane.
He is in the pit lane, I promise you.
He's not talking.
Talk to us, Ted.
I'm always talking to you, Ted. Hello.
There you are, Ted.
I'm always here. Sorry about that. Yeah, there's significant damage to the bottom of Mick Schumacher's car. It's pretty much on fire. So many Sparks was cooking the bib, the front part of the floor, and the plank as well. So that's more damage than you might think, just the front wing there.
Lando Norris, who we saw had that incident with Carlos Sainz going into turn 1, now up to 15th. The safety car, in this virtual safety car, rather helping Lando Norris's race, because the more laps we have at this speed, Martin, the more what is a 1 or 2 stop race might edge towards a 1 stop race, and he's on the hard compound tyre, maybe to go to the finish.
Yeah, it could play into his hands, and obviously the time he lost getting round to change the tyre. But Red Bull and Perez will be desperately hoping that the virtual safety car doesn't come to an end as they're heading towards the pit straight.
Yes, quite. Still, we need bits of debris clearing from the track. We're on lap 12 of this Brazilian Grand Prix. It feels like we've had more laps behind a virtual safety car or Bernd Maylander in the Mercedes GTR than we've actually had of racing so far. But Max Verstappen has led throughout, right from the word go. Verstappen aiming for back-to-back victories here at Interlagos. A Brazilian Grand Prix win in 2019. It's the Sao Paulo Grand Prix in 2021. Track conditions. Track temperature now about 15 degrees warmer than it was yesterday for the sprint. So the temperature actually has dropped by 5 degrees throughout the course of this race so far, which might help Mercedes out a little bit. There's a school of thought that said the hotter the track conditions, the more that might suit Red Bull and their setup for this weekend. There is Lando Norris running in 15th with Kimi Raikkonen right behind him now.
So double wave yellows then still on in Sector 9, suggesting marshals are on the track. Slow down and be prepared to stop, that means. But of course, under virtual safety car, they have to keep to a controlled earliest time of arrival at various points. They're the marshals boards that you see around the track every 200 or 300 meters on average they are.
Virtual safety car ending.
This is
so in a few moments time it'll go from yellow to green, but no one quite knows when that green is going to come, and there it goes. We're racing once again. Sergio Perez quite a bit further away than Lewis Hamilton would have wanted.
Yeah, I imagine Lewis is going to be on the phone saying, he gained a lot on me there. Was he under the target time?
They all have to drive to a set delta. They can monitor it on their dashboard. But look, there's the two Red Bulls now, quite a bit further away. But Verstappen 1.5 seconds clear of his teammate Sergio Perez. So through that VSC period, he's picked up about 3/10. Hamilton now 2.5 seconds back on Perez. Valtteri Bottas runs fourth ahead of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. Sebastian Vettel 7th, Pierre Gasly 8th, Daniel Ricciardo 9th, and Esteban Ocon is 10th. Now, let's see the straight line speed of the Mercedes along that main straight once again. And when we saw in practice Hamilton behind Perez, he was making big gains down this straight. He's making big gains here, but he is a little bit too far back to make that overtake. We're on lap 15. As Verstappen leads then by 1.6 seconds here in the sunshine of Sao Paulo. We welcome in the UK our viewers on Sky Sports main event. It's Verstappen that has led right the way from the start. When he got past Valtteri Bottas, the pole sitter, Bottas led his teammate Lewis Hamilton past a few laps ago. Hamilton has gone from 10th all the way up to 3rd, but he's now going to try and get past Sergio Perez before he can get to his championship rival. We've had a lot of drama so far, and a 10-second time penalty now, Martin, to Yuki Tsunoda for causing a collision.
Yeah, he was a day late and $1 short, wasn't he, in terms of going up the inside of turn 1 there on Lance Stroll. But this is going to be very interesting, the next few laps of this Grand Prix. As you say, can they stretch it out to a one-stopper now? Strategy is going to come into this, but Hamilton looks so fast in all the right places on this racetrack.
Well, he's a couple of tenths less behind than Sergio Perez on this particular lap, and that's going to start to go down and down to about 2 seconds gap between Perez and Hamilton by the time they get into the first corner. And there goes Lewis Hamilton in the distance behind Sergio Perez. If you are just joining us, you're a Sky Q and a Sky Glass customer, you can watch highlights of the race alongside the main action. Just press the red button. Hamilton might be pressing a button on his steering wheel, the overtake button at the moment, to try and get past Sergio Perez. Once again, he runs out of straight.
Yeah, the red light on the back of Perez's Red Bull there as it's harvesting energy into the battery pack. He'll need to try to deploy in a very defensive mode along the top straight. And this is where then Hamilton will struggle a little bit in the turbulent end. He said, come on, Valtteri, follow me, follow me. I need you, I need you. If we can pass the Red Bulls.
Get Max to give me DRS.
That's just what we were saying a few laps ago. He doesn't want Verstappen disappearing off into the distance.
Yeah. And so that's a difficult one, isn't it? Hey, Max, just slow down a little bit. Put yourself a bit closer to those two Mercedes.
But by doing that, that might leave Verstappen vulnerable to the undercut if Mercedes decide to pull that undercut. Further down the field, by the way, Ricciardo's repassed Ocon. Stroll has passed Alonso. There goes Hamilton with DRS on Sergio Perez. Perez hasn't got DRS to try and defend, and this could get a bit tasty. Down the Retta Aposta in a few corners' time. No investigation necessary in the incident between Raikkonen and Mick Schumacher. As through the Curva do Sol we go in the sunshine at Sao Paulo, and there is on board with Lewis Hamilton, that rear wing of the Red Bull getting closer, 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 but not close enough for him to make a move.
This is critical for the Red Bull team. Perez has got such a job to do here. If he can keep the Mercedes in his turbulent air, burn their tyres out a little bit and protect his teammate who's up for the World Championship, who's now 1.8 seconds ahead. He's not slowing down to give his teammate the help of the DRS. He's going to leave him to fight them alone.
Well, and I think that's all about the vulnerability to the undercut, which is powerful here. Hamilton is doing for Valtteri Bottas, or has been doing for Valtteri Bottas, what Perez would like Verstappen to do to him, and using DRS to pull him along.
There's turn 12. It's effectively in the dry, the last corner of the lap, and that is where you've really got to exit well. And it looks like Perez has done that, and he's just trying to break the slipstream now. Moving around a lot, probably a bit too much if the truth be known. And there's Hamilton, but trying to go down the outside. Is he going to sweep through? Can he keep it on the road? He can, he's done it.
Hamilton, who's been making a habit of going down the inside into turn one, this time dances around the outside, and he has done it. He's cleared Sergio Perez, who's got now DRS to try and fight his way back. They're going to go wheel to wheel into Cena de Largo, and Sergio Perez repasses Lewis Hamilton and reclaims that second place. Perez didn't fight the overtake from Hamilton, knew that with DRS he'd have half a chance of getting him back, and that half a chance worked a treat.
Yeah, drag reduction system, the rear wing open is very powerful here, isn't it? So he lives for another lap in front of the Mercs.
Yeah, so what does Hamilton do now? Does he think, right, maybe I need to wait until turn 4 before I can make this move stick? And all the while this is happening, Max Verstappen is pulling away out in front. The gap now, 3.7 seconds between Verstappen and Perez. He is out of undercut threat as it stands currently.
Yeah, and I imagine Perez would have to use a lot of battery in that re-overtake there. And here we head down the pit straight one more time. It's not very straight, is it? But it's very important.
Inside, outside, outside, inside. Which way is Lewis Hamilton going to go? To the left, to the right? It's going to be to the right. It's going to be round the outsides. And for the second lap, running the crowd sheer as Lewis Hamilton passes Sergio Perez. This time around, he looks a bit further ahead through the Curva del Sol to try and stay ahead.
Yeah, Perez was struggling a bit in the heart of the centre est there. And that then is job done. Hamilton sets off after his arch rival in this World Championship, Max Verstappen.
And the battle of the number 2s behind as Valtteri Bottas is right on the tail of Sergio Perez. Verstappen 3.7 seconds ahead. At the end of lap 18, he gained a second on Lewis Hamilton during the course of lap 18. But now Hamilton in clean air can start to reel him in, potentially.
But not only is Lewis quick down the straight, he's mighty on the brakes into turn 1. There's a combination for you for winning the Brazilian Grand Prix.
What a weekend this has been here at Interlagos. Because their rear wing failed the inspection, albeit by a fractional margin, the FIA deemed that they'd broken the technical regulations. Lewis Hamilton disqualified from qualifying, sent to the back of the grid for the sprints yesterday. He went from 20th up to 5th, took another penalty because he's got a new internal combustion engine, so started this race in 10th, and on lap 20 of this Sao Paulo Grand Prix, the top 2 in the championship are now the top 2 in the race.
Yeah, and Hamilton took a 10th.5 out of Verstappen on that lap. The gap at 3.8 still.
So they're going to have to push this a little bit, but they've saved a few laps behind the safety car. 1 stop, 2 stop, depends how you use your tyres on this one. There's no doubting that both Hamilton and Verstappen are going to have to push on here as we see once again how Hamilton got past Perez.
Yeah, Sergio did everything he could. He was really just hadn't got the speed, hadn't got the DRS, and I think Lewis could have gone either side there. He defended the inside line. It wasn't too late. He just did it the best he could. But then, there he goes. As I said, that would have used a lot of battery up to that perhaps left him a little bit vulnerable later on.
We'll see once more. That was how Perez repassed Lewis Hamilton on the previous lap. Going through Decido de Lago, the fans who've been queuing since early light here at Interlagos, very much getting their money's worth. Elsewhere in the field, this is on board with Sebastian Vettel. Daniel Ricciardo ahead of him, but for not much longer as Vettel makes his move into turn 4 and the Aston Martin ahead of the McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo. Meanwhile, Lance Stroll got past Fernando Alonso a few laps ago. So much going on, barely had time to mention that one. And Lando Norris up to 14th now with Antonio Giovinazzi in sight. Ted, down to you.
Yeah, great progress from Lando Norris. He's made up 3 places since that virtual safety car restart. So well done, Lando, making his way through. And let me tell you that Red Bull is saying to Sergio Perez, Lewis's tyres won't like all that fighting. We're enjoying it, but Red Bull think that Hamilton might have been cooking his tyres, damaging them for later in the stint with all that attacking. We'll see if they're right.
Thanks, Ted. We see Daniel Ricciardo getting past Sebastian Vettel, retaking 8th, and I might have put the mockers on Lance Stroll there, because the minute I mentioned that he got past Fernando Alonso, Alonso overtakes him going into turn 1. Apologies to Lance if that was the case.
Yeah, he's still within DRS zone now, just about by actually 4/1000ths of a second is Stroll on Alonso. But yeah, let's just have a quick look back down there. Lando Norris should get himself up into the points. Sebastian Vettel going well again, as he did yesterday, and Ricciardo going better than he did yesterday for McLaren, it must be said. And Leclerc ahead of Sainz today, unlike yesterday.
And the 2 Red Bulls and 2 Mercedes are just easing themselves ahead of the 2 Ferraris, running 5th and 6th as we see Leclerc ahead of Sainz here. Without DRS, Martin, Max Verstappen over the start-finish line as we're on board now. And Antonio Giovinazzi, he's got Lance Stroll in his sights. Stroll's starting to struggle a little bit on his tyres. Without DRS, Max Verstappen 300 kilometres an hour on the last lap. Lewis Hamilton 305 kilometres an hour.
Massive then, is it? Mind you, you wouldn't be run into at 5 kilometres an hour, would you?
No,
so
not really.
It's enough. But if you add in slipstream and DRS, then it'll be something over 20 kilometres per hour advantage.
That's what Hamilton needs to do to get in that DRS range. If you want it in miles an hour, by the way, 186 miles an hour for Max Verstappen and 189 miles an hour for Lewis Hamilton.
So Verstappen a couple of tenths faster through the middle sector again on this lap, so that's working well in that respect. And pretty even Stevens on the lap time, but the gap 3.5 seconds, as you can see for yourself. Ted, what have you got for us?
Verstappen being reassured, I think is the right word, by his engineer on the radio, saying that we hold the advantage in the middle sector. Obviously Lewis is fast on the main straight and on the back straight after the centre S, but we're okay, Max, says the Red Bull engineer, in the middle sector. We'll see what happens. As for strategy, I think as we've been saying, Crofty, this is pushing them towards a one-stop with all the laps held under the safety car and virtual safety cars. As Lance Stroll, I think, is it? Yes, it is. Who comes into the pits. I can see 18 on the Aston Martin down there. And yeah, he does have a little bit of damage on his car. That'll be costing him some downforce. So pushing them towards a one-stop. But if you think that hard tyres are only really going to do 40 laps, then we're looking at lap 30, aren't we, for a stop? So what does Hamilton potentially do with an early stop, with a possible undercut for that? Stop, what, 27, 28? But then that leaves them a bit vulnerable later on.
Yeah, well, both teams have got Perez for Red Bull and Bottas for Mercedes-Benz to play around and try to put stress on the others, haven't they, in terms of the undercut, as Ted calls it, and as we all call it, when they come in early and take advantage and get track position with the fresh tyres. If you're new to Formula 1, I know lots of you know that already, but with 3.5 seconds advantage, I'd be surprised if the undercut is worth that in one relatively short lap of Formula 1.
Yeah, and it is a relatively short lap here at 2.67 miles. Probably need to be 2 to 2.5 seconds behind to make the undercut work here. And I just wonder, we're going to start to go through a bit of a tyre management phase as this one or two stopper, the team's turned into a definite one stopper by doing a little bit of conservative driving.
Yeah, there was 1,000th of a second between Verstappen and Hamilton on the last lap. Verstappen just the faster. And Perez is joining them now and dropping Bottas a little bit. So are the Red Bulls keeping their tyres in just a little bit better?
All the while, the track temperature continues to fall too, now down to 49 degrees.
So it's the right side of it more now.
Understood.
And sliding is not what you want. Looks spectacular, doesn't do much for your race strategy.
No, it's all very calm on the pit wall, isn't there, with GP Lambiase? Yeah, okay, fine. I'll get back to you. And so, can they get this? Can they get these tyres into the 30s in terms of laps?
Which is probably what they need. 45 laps, say Pirelli, for these hard compound tyres. But all the data so far this weekend has all been gathered in temperatures not as hot as we've got on the track at the moment. And as Martin pointed out at the start of this race, well, a lot of these drivers haven't run the hard tyre yet. Ant, down to you at race control.
Yeah, as you heard, Max was complaining about the tyres just starting to slip away, but he's been on the radio again since that message saying he's feeling it in turn 1 as well. Lewis, I'm riding on board with him. He had a moment last lap around turn 10 where he is now on the exit.
2 secs.
Rear's moving around a lot.
Yeah, exactly what I was saying. So rear's moving around, so especially last lap on the exit of turn 10. He's just coming up to that corner right now. And yeah, once again, I'm just riding on board with him. He's lost the rear in the middle of the corner this time. The tyres are falling away from them.
And he's lost a bit more time on this lap, lapping Mick Schumacher. Perez and Bottas are now going to have to do, and Verstappen had done on a previous lap as we watch Gasly go through in 7th place ahead of Daniel Ricciardo in 8th, winner of the Grand Prix. The last time we had a sprint weekend at Monza that particular afternoon, and he's currently the lead McLaren driver here with Lando Norris making his way through the field after being last at one stage, now up to 13th. Ricciardo has got Sebastian Vettel behind him, but he's looking more to Pierre Gasly as Gasly disappears into the pit lane. Lap 26. Maybe an early stop here for Pierre Gasly on those medium tyres.
Good information for everybody else. They don't have to come through into that pit lane fast, don't they? Sweep through that blind chicane. It's terrifying when you watch them up there. On go hard compound tyres. Now we're going to get a feel for it.
Yep, so this will be of news, I'm sure, to the likes of Red Bull and to Mercedes as to how the hard compound tyre is faring on a car that's a little closer to the leading two teams in Formula One. Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri. As he comes out onto the track, he is behind Kimi Raikkonen, yet to stop. Kimi Raikkonen has started from the pit lane in this race. Lap 26 then, and the gap out in front, 3.7 seconds. Well, it's kind of 3.9 seconds. It's just gone up a little bit, been hovering around this area for a while.
Yeah, and you can't play games, you can't take risks and chance.
Hamilton's pitting.
He is indeed.
Hamilton is pitting, and Mercedes are pitting him early to go onto the hard compound tyre and be aggressive and put pressure on the Red Bull team. So they need a clean stop. They got a clean stop. 2.4 seconds. Job well done by the pit crew as Ferrari wait, I think, for Charles Leclerc maybe to come in. Carlos Sainz to come in first. Hamilton comes out onto the track with the Ferrari disappearing. Is he going to be ahead of Ricciardo? No, he's going to be behind Daniel Ricciardo, but Mercedes will want him ahead of Sebastian Vettel. They won't want him to be stuck behind the Aston Martin, and he's not. He's back onto the track now. Sainz will come out ahead. No, behind Pierre Gasly potentially there. Oh, there goes Gasly through now. It was Tsunoda that came through first, so they reacted, Ferrari, to that early pit stop from AlphaTauri.
Yeah, what I'm saying, you can't play games with the tyres here. It's the right rear tyre that's under the most pressure. If it wears out, you'll just lose so much time. And corners like turn 3, the long left, Mergulho, the long left down the hill. This track really punishes, it's anti-clockwise, the right rear. And of course, Red Bull will have to cover that because they don't want to give Lewis track position. And let's, if he's in lap's been okay, Lewis's out lap now is all about, and he's got Ricciardo in front of him.
He's down at Junsao at the moment. He is behind Daniel Ricciardo, but he's not getting held up by that traffic. We can see Hamilton on the left-hand side of the screen as at 80 kilometres an hour, Max Verstappen makes his way down that pit lane. Hamilton is speeding at 305 kilometres an hour down the main straight. He has now got a bit of traffic. Daniel Ricciardo ahead of him. Verstappen has still got to wind his way on the inside around the centre S's. He's out onto the track and is out ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who's got DRS to get past Daniel Ricciardo and does so. And that gap between Verstappen and Hamilton that was about 4 seconds is now about a second and a half because Mercedes came in a lap earlier.
Yes, but it cost them time, didn't it, behind the McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo. So it's still very much then advantage Red Bull. But how will the relative performances be on these hard tyres? Remind you, they only allocated 2 of them for the entire event, and none of the top, including Ricciardo actually, but none of the Red Bull or McLaren and Mercedes drivers have used these tyres at any point this weekend.
So it could still be a one-stop strategy for Red Bull or for Mercedes. Perez is now told to box, lest Valtteri Bottas gets past him. Perez does box. Bottas continues on and leads this race. One thing is for certain, Ferrari with Carlos Sainz are going for at least a two-stop strategy because he's got the medium compound tyre on, which is what he started this race on, so he's going to need another compound towards the end of this race.
Lewis Hamilton fastest lap of the Grand Prix, so that gives him a World Championship point at the moment as well. Max will desperately now need to push without taking too much life out of the tyres and keep Hamilton out of his 1 second DRS zone.
If Hamilton has just done a 1:13.3 and Valtteri Bottas has done a 1:15.3, then we'll go to 10 in a couple of seconds. Then you can bet your bottom dollar that Verstappen's doing something around Hamilton's pace. And in a few laps, as we see there, Lando Norris going wheel to wheel with car number 55, Carlos Sainz. And this is down in 10th place for Norris, 9th place for Sainz.
Well, wheel to wheel on the start line as well,
Yes,
weren't they?
quite.
Which is why when Carlos Sainz came in, you couldn't see any colour banding on his right front tyre.
Just about to say, Martin, if Valtteri Bottas has stayed out there, is that Mercedes putting Bottas out to try and maybe hold up Verstappen a little bit and to keep Verstappen in range? If he stays there for the next 5 or 6 laps, if he can, then Verstappen's going to be right behind him.
Well, we'll see what game they play, but it will definitely give Bottas some better tyres towards the end of the Grand Prix as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, certainly would. Another fastest lap for Lewis Hamilton. The gap now 1.2 seconds. He was 4/10 faster than Max Verstappen on that previous lap. He's going to be trying to edge his way towards the DRS limit of 1 second in a moment. I'll tell you who has got DRS, and it's Pierre Gasly behind Lando Norris. Norris is looking in his mirrors. Gasly's coming at him here. Gasly's going to go down the inside. Gasly, nice move, neat move, moves up into the points once again. He's 10th.
Yeah, fresh tyres. So Lando will be needing some of those, but of course he pitted very early, didn't he? Pitted at the end of lap 1, so he's out of sync completely, is Lando Norris.
Virtual safety car, and more debris on the track, more debris coming off the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll.
Which of course had Tsunoda's AlphaTauri into the side of it, didn't it?
That was a lot of carbon fibre came off from the floor area there.
Most of it's cleared the track, hasn't it? But
so the marshals will just, under a virtual safety car, be allowed to run onto the track. No signs of anyone coming into the pits, although Valtteri Bottas is coming into the pits.
Cheap stop for him, isn't it? Very cheap stop. How is this going to work out for him?
Well, it's going to get him ahead of Sergio Perez, that is for sure. As Verstappen and Hamilton make their way now towards turn 1. Another neat stop, 2.6 seconds for Valtteri Bottas. The top 2, Verstappen and Hamilton, now disappearing round the Curva do Sol. But that has really helped Valtteri Bottas' race. It's got him onto the podium. And Verstappen go with the green flag now being waved.
Yeah, we can't get ourselves let undercut again, okay?
I copy that.
So if there is to be another stop, we've got to make sure we do it before Mercedes. 1.5 seconds. Once again, Verstappen enjoying a little buffer of 2 or 3 tenths during that virtual safety car period, but that has really helped Valtteri Bottas, brought him right back into this race.
Yes, because he's pitting, of course, when everybody else is at the controlled virtual safety car speed. That's what I mean when I say a cheap pit stop time-wise. So, yeah, I mean, what Max is saying is like, hey, come on, don't put him into my DRS slipstream. I don't have an answer for that if he gets anywhere near me. And, of course, he's perilously close now to the 1 second gap is Hamilton. Does he get DRS here?
He doesn't get DRS, I wouldn't have thought, going through the detection zone. I think he was just that little bit outside, but he might get DRS for the next bit.
2 laps after the VSC, of course,
yeah,
isn't it? So just to correct myself there. So he won't get that yet, but he's in the zone.
Powered by AWS, this is the new pit lane performance that shows Verstappen on entry, on exit, was faster than Lewis Hamilton, who was in the pit lane for fractionally longer, trying to monitor the whole of the pit lane performance from entry into it to about turn 5, where they get back to racing speed again. And all these fractions of a second make a difference, because now, just under 1 second behind, Hamilton's going to get DRS here.
Yeah, and Max, I think Mercedes might have played a blind here, and Max saw it. He knew, didn't he? He's like, okay, I'm now vulnerable. I'm now very vulnerable. He needs a tremendous Mergulho corner, and then junction, it's called, up to turn 12. This is the critical one. You have to get good exit there, and he has.
Hamilton is struggling in the dirty air through the 2 hairpins in that middle section. He's losing time behind Max Verstappen. He'll certainly pick up a toe and get into the slipstream, and this will help him. But when he gets closer to that Red Bull, the turbulent air is not helping him at all. Verstappen leads Hamilton, Bottas, Perez. Alonso's 5th. He hasn't made a pit stop yet. Leclerc ahead of Sainz, Gasly, Ricciardo and Norris in the top 10.
And Verstappen's now got that World Championship point. No, Bottas, 13-0. Verstappen had it. Now Bottas has got the World Championship point. But these 2 amazing drivers slugging it out once again at the front, just as we saw in Austin, for example. But right now, well, which car would you rather be in?
I don't like many repeats on Mattelli, Martin, but I'll have a repeat of these battles week after week after week. Thank you very much indeed. We want to head down to Ted Kravitz in a couple of moments. Let's just see this replay. This is Charles Leclerc getting past Fernando Alonso, who hasn't stopped yet. Ted, to you.
So the other stoppers under that virtual safety car, Esteban Ocon for Alpine and Daniel Ricciardo, a very cheap stop. Good thinking by McLaren, very nice and opportunistic. This could end up with a nice load of points for Daniel Ricciardo by the end of the race.
Yeah, he's up to 9th now. Lando Norris in 10th, but for McLaren is still a long way behind the 2 Ferraris in this race, of Leclerc 5th and Carlos Sainz 7th. Right, down the main straight again we go.
And let's look at the rear wing of Lewis Hamilton. The scrutineers were looking at that all day, weren't they? And in fact, they kept it all weekend so far, but it wasn't open.
Didn't get the DRS, which is worth, on that main straight, the end of the straight, about 10 miles an hour of extra pace, if you can get that DRS.
Max can afford to take a bit of life out of his tyres.
You're 3/10 quicker in the middle sector at the moment. Just straight line deficits.
Max can afford to take a bit of life out of those tyres, knowing that Lewis is struggling a bit in his turbulent and hot air behind him.
You would imagine that he is going to be faster through that middle sector. Hamilton's close enough to get affected by the dirty air through those kind of slower and medium speed corners.
Yeah, but that ain't where you're going to overtake, is
no,
it?
It's not.
It's not the bit where you need to be faster. It helps because you get to T12 earlier before you climb the hill, but sorry, Crofty.
I was just about to say, position swapping, 14th place now for George Russell, ahead of Lance Stroll, and struggling because he's lost large chunks, so shall we say, of his car throughout this race so far. We're on board with Lando Norris down in 10th place. Daniel Ricciardo. I'll correct myself on that one, with Pierre Gasly just ahead of him through Mergulho, the dive. They go, and I wonder if he's got the straight line speed to try and make a move on Pierre Gasly at the end of this straight. Still Hamilton struggling to keep within a second of Max Verstappen out in front as Fernando Alonso pits, and the rest of the top 10 all move up a place because after 35 laps his medium tyres have had enough.
Of course, Mercedes couldn't afford to leave Bottas out front there for interference. They had to take advantage of the virtual safety car to get him ahead of Perez.
No, quite. It worked a treat for them. The strategy, unless others are going to have to go into a two-stop strategy here, the one I can't quite understand is Ferrari committing themselves to a two-stop strategy early on in this race by running medium and then medium for stints 1 and then 2. Be interesting to see where Carlos Sainz ends up in this race.
Yeah,
safety car might help him a little bit later on, because he is definitely having to stop again. Hamilton's dropped back a little bit on this lap. He was nearly a second and a half behind at one stage, and at what stage do your tyres and your brakes start to overheat here? If this was Mexico, you wouldn't be running that close to the car in front for as long as Hamilton has. It's a slow stop for Fernando Alonso, helping his race. He's come back out now, though. And as you can see, he's down in 14th place. But how long can Hamilton keep behind the Red Bull before things start to get a bit too hot?
Lewis a 10th up in the first sector. And he looks closer, doesn't he? He definitely looks closer there. This is a true head-to-head. Let's see what the middle part of the lap looks like shortly. It's a long middle sector, really, 37 seconds compared to 19 for the first sector and 17 for the final sector. 37.5 and 37.8. So Lewis really in. That's the 3/10 that Red Bull have been talking about on the pit wall.
Yeah, that's keeping Verstappen far enough away along the straights then to keep hold of this lead, a lead that's helping Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship, a lead that's helping Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship as well. Hamilton can get past Max Verstappen. Mercedes will take back the Constructors' Championship lead. Live as it stands at the moment, Red Bull do have that lead in the Constructors' Championship, and bit by bit they're pulling themselves away from Bottas and then from Perez, running 3rd and 4th.
This is just like Austin, isn't it? Would be a 14-point turnaround if Hamilton gets ahead of Verstappen. He gains 7. Fastest lap is still with Bottas, and vice versa. You know, remember that Max is 21 points ahead. If he wins, he's 28 points. That's more than a victory. That means he's guaranteed to lead the championship after the next round.
Yeah, as we ride on board then with the Alpine of Esteban Ocon. Yuki Tsunoda was the car in front at one stage, but a very nice little move from Esteban Ocon will take him into the points. And I don't think he's ever scored a point here at Interlagos before. He has a best place finish of 12th in 2016, but he's running in the top 10 at the moment. Sebastian Vettel runs behind Tsunoda. There is the Constructors' Championship as it stands, where AlphaTauri have a 5-point lead over Alpine. They were level at the start of this race. McLaren are struggling a little bit behind Ferrari. Currently Ferrari 3rd in the Drivers' Championship, and right out in front it's Red Bull over Mercedes. And that swing you were talking about, Martin, so important. With 3 races to go, when you're a victory behind, you're running out of time, and no longer is anything in your own hands in terms of trying to win this championship. You're relying on the opposition to falter.
Yeah, absolutely. Interestingly, Verstappen and Hamilton now slightly slower at this phase of the Grand Prix than Bottas and Perez running in 3rd and 4th. Maybe there is a bit of tyre management going on, and Max is just keeping it out of the DRS zone.
I don't want to do too much of that, as in comes Lando Norris, who stopped on lap 2 at the end of lap 1 after getting that puncture. Hard compound tyres go on. It took me stationary for a little bit longer than you'd normally expect. 3.8 seconds for Lando Norris.
Gun had to go back on again, didn't it?
Yeah. That'll take him through, though, to the end of this race. Yeah, they don't want to lose out too much time, Verstappen and Hamilton. It's around about 0.4 of a second a lap that Bottas is closing. But what Red Bull don't want to do is to do too much tyre management and then bring Bottas potentially into play for an early stop and an undercut and leave Hamilton out, or vice versa. It's one thing to be reeled in, but they don't want to let the fish get a bit too close as it stands at the moment. We're on board with Sebastian Vettel. Got Yuki Tsunoda very much in his sights as they head out of Pico de Pato down through Maguglia. You don't often see passes into that little compression, but he's handily placed is Sebastian Vettel here out of Junsao to blast his way past, and there is Fernando Alonso lurking in the background. Yuki Tsunoda, the one rookie on the grid in 2021, and he's got 6 World Championships worth of experience behind him, as Vettel now does make the initial move, and Fernando Alonso makes the second move, and he's lost 2 places in the space of one straight. Vettel up into the points ahead of Alonso and go down to 10.
If you're talking fish, Crofty, how about a cod theory from down here?
Oh, I love it.
Verstappen and Hamilton, their cars are just too evenly matched. Red Bull are happy leading, so why don't Hamilton's team go aggressive, just as you're saying? Just because these hard tyres, these white tyres, can do 40 laps, doesn't mean they're going to be very fast at the end of that stint. And while Hamilton might be protecting those tyres at the moment, maybe we might get a call from Mercedes saying, come on, Lewis, let's use the tyre now, go for a two-stop like the Ferraris are doing, and then see what we can do from then on. Oh, team radio?
So if we were to stop again, what tyre would you prefer?
Check colour and switch. Movement. That's for the tyre, mate.
Copy, we're on it.
Well, Lewis is telling them on his switch.
Yeah, so they're keeping it coded. They don't want to give anything away to Red Bull at all, or to us, sadly. What colour would you go for, Ted?
Me? I'm a pit reporter. I've got no idea. I'd go hard again, I think. It is still absolutely baking hot down here. The lap times don't seem too bad on the hard, and you just got to make it work. Ferrari have gone medium again. They're okay, but I think you're going to see them in quite quickly. Yuki Tsunoda just comes in front of me to serve that penalty, guys.
Thanks ever so much. Verstappen has been told to box.
For hard tyres, which makes sense. I don't see any point putting anything else on. And they're paying attention. Do not leave me exposed to an undercut again.
Well, this is going to be fascinating now to see what lap times Verstappen and Hamilton can put together. 2.7 seconds for Verstappen. Didn't want to be exposed to the undercut, so Red Bull have stopped before Mercedes. Oh, and that is not going to help Verstappen, as out of the pits comes Nicholas Latifi right ahead of the Red Bull. That will slow him down as they get onto the track.
Touch of deja vu there, wasn't it? Of a Williams launching in front of him, but nowhere near as close as Robert Kubica.
So, down the Retro-Aposta they go now. Blue flags have been waved for Latifi, who keeps out of the way, but Verstappen would not have wanted that whatsoever. He's 20 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. You lose about 22 seconds for your pit stop here. And that should be the second and final pit stop made then by Verstappen's crew down at Red Bull.
Yeah, it's coming back to the point I was making earlier on. You don't gamble here, because if you do wear that right rear out in particular, you'll just fall off the pace horribly. So they've committed early. Why not? You might as well use the gap, keep track position.
There is Max Verstappen then, currently fourth in this race, but he has stopped one extra time than Lewis Hamilton. And the Mercedes pit crew are ready for Valtteri Bottas. Absolutely, hard tyres going on for Bottas. They are leaving Hamilton out longer to make him racier at the end of this race with fresher tyres, or do they think that they've got the lap times in clear air to actually overcome the potential threat of an undercut here from Max Verstappen? Bottas comes back out into this race.
Are you sure about this? A-firm.
And he comes out behind the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc on fresher tyres, and he should dispatch the Ferrari quite quickly, but Bottas questioning whether that's the right decision or not.
Well, it sort of guarantees to keep him behind Verstappen, doesn't it? You can't play any kind of role with Verstappen at that point. Verstappen with nice clear air in front of him. All he's got is Perez down the road and then Hamilton a bit further down the road. And has been putting in some really good sectors on his outlap as Max Verstappen.
On board with Lance Stroll, and whatever damage he's got on his car, it might still give him a little less drag down the straights and a chance to get past George Russell, which he duly accepts. They go wheel to wheel through turn one. Nice shot there. The Aston Martin going round the outside. Now Perez is coming in, so the only one of the top four to stay out for a few laps longer is Lewis Hamilton. And as he stays out, Martin, Max Verstappen now sets a new fastest lap of the race. He's just gone 1.4 seconds quicker than Hamilton on that last lap.
Yes, he's a long way, Perez is a long way behind Bottas there as he comes out, as he was before they started the pit. But yeah, that sort of cements Max's place out front, doesn't it? But what it is doing is burning up those tyres already.
If you are just joining us here at Interlagos, we're on lap 43 out of 71. If you're watching in the UK, you're a Sky Q or a Sky Glass customer, and you want to know what's happened so far, we'll watch the highlights of the race alongside the live action by pressing the red button. and we are getting to a very intriguing phase of this race. Hamilton is going to make his pit stop.
How do you want me to approach this?
Look after the tyre, Max. Look after the tyre.
Verstappen's being told don't push too hard, don't burn out those tyres too quickly. Hamilton then comes in to his pit stop. Verstappen is going through onto the main straight, as you can see. Hamilton limited to 80 kilometres an hour down that pit straight, and it's a long, long way from where the Mercedes garage is, and by the time he's allowed to get off the pit limiter and onto the power, Verstappen's gone through turn 1. Now, is Verstappen going to hit a bit of traffic? Is Hamilton going to come out into a nice gap? That could make quite a difference here. There's the Williams of George Russell going through, and Antonio Giovinazzi too. What Hamilton doesn't want to do is get stuck behind Yuki Tsunoda. That certainly hasn't happened. Now the race is on then, ladies and gentlemen. 2.6 seconds, the gap between Verstappen and Hamilton. Hamilton has got tyres that are, what, 2-3 laps fresher on his car.
Is a couple of laps, is it?
Yeah.
Or did it go as far as 3?
No, I asked her to.
And Hamilton...
No, Lewis, it's a long stint, and the wear was high on that medium.
And Hamilton, not for the first time this season, doesn't quite like the strategy that he's been presented with.
Yeah, he wanted the medium tyres, but Bono's telling him, hey, look, the set we took off from the start were wearing out very quickly indeed. It seems like a hard tyre is the only sensible tyre out there, and as you quite rightly said, a long way to go.
Bottas thinks then that they've just thrown away an easy 1-2. Hamilton not happy with the strategy call there. Anthony, you heard that radio message in full as we ride on board with Sergio Perez just for 2 seconds. Charles Leclerc is the car ahead. That's not going to stay ahead. Sergio Perez now moves up to 4th. What was the rest of that message between Lewis Hamilton and Bono, Ant?
Well, yeah, Lewis just came on to say, look, yeah, I understand it. So, you know, it was the right decision. Tyre deg is high. And there's one thing that the engineers can see when the tyres actually come off the car. The drivers don't have that level of information, despite Lewis's request to go on the mediums again. I personally think the better strategy was to go on the harder tyres. But if I was Mercedes, I would have gone even earlier than Verstappen. I think Red Bull pulled a bit of a blinder there in their strategy.
Yeah, I think Valtteri Bottas saying we should have won stop. We've just given up track position. Sergio Perez has just stolen the fastest lap point off his teammate Max Verstappen.
That might come back to Hamilton in a few moments. He's gone quickest through the first sector.
Is the undercut not powerful?
No, not really, but we should have more traffic in about 10 laps or so.
And traffic could play a part very much in this. Christian Horner is listening to us, watching on from the Red Bull pit wall. Do you think you've got the upper hand on strategy at the moment, Christian?
Well, we have track position, but tyres are 3 laps older, so it's cat and mouse. It's a crucial phase of the race, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it pans out.
That 1 minute 12.1 that Lewis has just delivered up was a pretty powerful statement, Christian.
Yeah, there's no tyre saving going there.
Christian, was this the plan all along, a 2-stop strategy?
It was always leaning towards a 2-stop, so I don't think it was ever a 1-stop, particularly with these temperatures that we've got today.
And bringing Max in when he did, was that a reaction to what Mercedes did in the first round of pit stops?
Well, our only chance is to bank track position, because we just don't have the straight line speed to pass them. So, yeah, you know, it's try and hang on now and see what we've got.
And if you do hang on, it'd be a nice little early birthday present for you. Happy birthday for Tuesday.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Christian Horner with us this weekend. We're on lap 46 out of 71. Let us not forget, Lewis Hamilton has made up 8 places in this race so far after starting 10th. He might win the overtake trophy just by his performances alone this weekend, the way it's been going. The gap between Verstappen and Hamilton when they cross the line is now down to half a second. This is as close as it's been throughout the entire race so far. Hamilton with another fastest lap of the race. He's got DRS. Now we're heading down the Retta Apposta, down towards the Casino del Lago. Hamilton, for one little instance, had a bit of a look there. Now, can he hang on to the rear of this Red Bull through the middle part of this lap to give him a better chance over the start-finish line?
He's got to do it now. He needs to be putting extra strain on Verstappen's tyres as well by being in front of him, because he's certainly taking plenty of life out of his own tyres. Because with his extraordinary lap times, is Lewis Hamilton. So this is a critical phase of the Grand Prix.
What Mercedes will be hoping is that 3 laps that they've got in the bag, as it were, or they've banked by stopping a bit later, might just help them when it comes to the tyre wear that Hamilton is experiencing now, following so close to the car in front. And he's now 9/10 of a second behind Hamilton, so he's lost a bit of time in that middle sector where he struggles in the turbulent air of the Red Bull, but where he's not struggling is getting into the slipstream and getting pace down that main straight. And here comes Hamilton on Max Verstappen, down towards turn 1. Verstappen moved and cut out any possibility of an overtake down the inside.
Yeah, but Hamilton will get another helping of the DRS down this back straight. There it goes.
And crucially, Martini is closer than he was on the previous lap. And here goes Lewis Hamilton. He was last at the start of the sprint. He's trying to take the lead from Verstappen, but he is forced wide by Verstappen, and Verstappen himself has to go off the track. Hamilton thought for one moment he might have got that move done. Verstappen forced him so wide, he had to leave the track himself.
And Hamilton struggling there then through turn 6 with the dirty tyres. The pair of them off the road. I wonder what the stewards will think about that. And still the Mercedes is moving around a lot.
I want to see this replay from this angle as well, Martin, because did Max Verstappen push Hamilton a bit too wide and not give him space? Hamilton's ahead there. Verstappen then comes back at him.
He opened the steering wheel, didn't he?
Did Verstappen drive Hamilton off the track?
He didn't run into him, but Mercedes will think that, and he will say, hey, the car was sliding, we didn't touch, I did my best to turn the corner, he didn't turn the corner either. But he didn't shove him off the track, but he certainly ran him out of road.
Yeah, he didn't run into him because Hamilton had to move over so far to the right, he was almost diving into the lake, to be fair, and the stewards have noted that incident, and they might decide to have a little investigation. We'll see in a few moments' time, but that was very, very close. They've made contact before. We've seen it, haven't we? Silverstone after the sprint, Monza after the sprint, Interlagos after the sprint. It nearly happened again.
Yeah, you have to be careful you don't pick a puncture up out there as well. So the key thing is, did he open the steering wheel? Did he actually intentionally stop trying to turn the corner?
Which obviously we're not going to see from this particular angle, I wouldn't have thought, but this is Hamilton. And in a moment there's Max Verstappen. Hamilton was ahead. Verstappen maybe might have braked a little bit later into that corner.
And that incident is under investigation.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Anthony Davidson's at Sky Race Control.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was just looking at the onboard, and this is the shot we have. It was showing Max's steering wheel, and just at this moment, it flicked to the rear view shot. I want to see the steering wheel. He didn't turn into the corner. Of course, he made his life difficult. It might have been a silly boy there, you know. He might be giving himself a penalty. I feel like he didn't try to turn into the corner, but I can't say for sure because I can't see his steering wheel.
Yeah. But I'm not sure we can make this to the end.
I think Max just wants a little bit of peace and quiet because he is under pressure once again. Hamilton's within 7/10 of a second of Max Verstappen. He got to within, or just under 4/10 of a second before he made that move. That's what he's got to try and do. Has he lost the ability here, Martin, to get that close by not making the move stick as Lance Stroll is out and retired from this race?
So Red Bull will say, hey, look, they both went off the track. Mercedes will say, he ran us off the track, he ran us out of road. And they were both steaming in to the braking zone, weren't they? And it'll be up to the stewards, but you need to see the data, you need to see the steering wheel.
So things are heating up at the front, there might be penalties coming.
Just to say as well, Bono telling Lewis Hamilton is under investigation. It's been noted by the stewards. That doesn't necessarily mean it's under investigation at the moment. They note that something's happened, then they decide whether they're going to investigate it. Hamilton's got DRS once again behind Verstappen, and he is getting a bit closer and to the stage that he was at when we saw the tangle about 3 laps ago. So Hamilton's come back at Verstappen here, and he's gaining on him once again. Now he goes into the DRS zone. Is he going to try and dance around the outside? Is he going to cut down the inside? Is he too far back? We'll find out as we go into turn 4. Verstappen's a few car lengths ahead. Ted, down to you.
Mercedes' position will be that Max Verstappen drove Lewis off the track significantly then and gained an advantage or kept a lasting advantage. That's what they'll be pushing to the stewards.
And if Verstappen did get a 5-second penalty at the moment, he would still be in 2nd place. And I can't imagine there'll be any more than a 5-second penalty. There are a number, and if he doesn't if he doesn't pit again to serve that 5-second penalty, it's added on at the end.
Daniel Ricciardo is the second driver to retire from this race. We saw damage to Lance Stroll's Aston Martin. For whatever reason, I'm sure Ted is scuttling his way down to McLaren at the moment. Daniel Ricciardo is now out too, so we've lost 2 drivers from this race, Ricciardo and Stroll, and the top 2 in the championship are the top 2 in this race. Verstappen going for back-to-back victories here at Interlagos. The only one to do that in the last 14 runnings of a Grand Prix here in Brazil is Nico Rosberg, 2 years before and 1 year before he won the World Championship. Hamilton's got DRS again that far back at the moment. All it's serving to do is bring him that much closer before it slams shut again and into turn 4.
Yeah, as I said, that was the critical phase, wasn't it, as to whose tyres are hurting the most.
Go ahead.
Michael, that is all about let them race. That's all about let them race.
Yep, no problems. That's why I'm just having a look at it. Jonathan, there is nothing further than that. Thank you for your input.
Thank you for your receiving it.
My pleasure.
Slightly sarcastic tone from Michael Massey there as Jonathan Wheatley, sporting director for Red Bull.
Yeah, so Michael Massey, the race director, can call that in, or the stewards can, I'm sure, ask him to call it in and have a look at it, have a look at the data, have a look at the steering angle. I doubt there's a lot of steering angle on there. It's really a question of were they both going to make the corner.
And did Verstappen, you know, not make an attempt to go a little bit further left to leave Lewis Hamilton room. I mean, you get drivers understeering off a little bit, that happens all the time, but no investigation necessary. So say the FIA. They're satisfied in the stewards' room that Verstappen did nothing wrong. So Hamilton, if he's to get past Verstappen here, is going to have to do it on merit and without any penalty going to Max Verstappen.
Yeah, well, they've decided he did make a genuine effort to turn the corner. He was on the dirty line on the way in. Don't think there was a whole lot of steering angle going on, but he now knows he can probably do that again if he wants to.
So Hamilton might need to pick a different line of attack. We knew that Ferrari were committing to 2-stop strategies this afternoon, and here comes Charles Leclerc for his next stop in this race, and his second stop in this race. Leclerc will come out ahead of Fernando Alonso in 6th place. Carlos Sainz currently in 5th. Sainz has got to stop again because he's been running medium compound tyres throughout this race.
So Verstappen's going to get some DRS off the back of Raikkonen, or is he?
No, he's not, because Raikkonen pits. He thought he might be getting some DRS, but Raikkonen pits, so he can't use that DRS to unlap himself because there's no one there in front to unlap himself with. And Hamilton is right on his tail going through the centre S's. Is Verstappen close enough to Mick Schumacher for the second time in a few races to get a bit of DRS advantage when lapping him? No, he's not. Hamilton has got DRS. Is he going to get close enough down the Retroposta to make a move? No, he's not. He needs a couple of tenths more coming out through the Curva del Sol, closer to Verstappen, to try and get that advantage.
I think Verstappen's more likely to get dirty air from the back marker now than he is a DRS assistance, but he's straight out of the way is young Mick Schumacher.
So Lewis, apparently no investigation necessary for running you off track.
Of course, man. Of course.
And if you thought that Michael Massey had a slightly sarcastic tone when he was talking to Jonathan Wheatley, that might be troubled quadrupled by Lewis Hamilton, who rather feels that the FIA were not going to do anything. Such has been, I think, the tone of this weekend. And don't forget, Lewis Hamilton sent to the back of the grid after being disqualified from qualifying for the sprint because of a 0.2 millimetre failure in his rear wing.
Hamilton doesn't get DRS on that particular straight.
Certainly didn't open, and then he had obviously the penalty for the internal combustion engine as well. If he's going to win this, he is definitely going to be winning it the hard way.
Got it now.
He's got it now, and he's 9/10 of a second back, as you can see on the side of your screen. It picks up a couple of tenths by the end of that straight. I'm with that, Martin. I'd like to see on board with Verstappen, and then we can all make up our minds for definite on that incident.
So crowding off track and gaining an unfair advantage, and no action necessary.
Ron, having looked at it all completely, it was one of those, and obviously had a good look at it. That's why we've gone for a no investigation.
The thing is, though, and look, I don't know, and we'll ask Michael Massey. There he is, the race director, Martin. have they got the steering angle data or the steering angle view on board with Max Verstappen that none of the rest of us have seen yet? Because if they haven't...
Well, they've certainly got all the data, everything. Brakes, throttle, steering, all sorts of things to have a look at. So, yeah, Red Bull, as I say, Red Bull, Max will say, I was on the middle of the track, it was dirty, I tried to go in and the car stood. We both braked very late. And of course, Mercedes, unsurprisingly saying, he crowded us off the racetrack.
As Ant was saying, though, he wanted to see the view from the front, and just before they got to the corner, the camera actually switched. And you don't always see all angles at all times.
It's a different angle, isn't it?
This was from the helicopter. We've seen this once before. And they almost touched. They almost touched. If Hamilton hadn't moved to the right, they definitely would have touched.
Max is a lucky boy not to get a penalty for that.
It's there was room, and then there wasn't room. That to me looks like Max ran Lewis off the road. That angle there, he was given room on the inside, and then he took a little bit more going through the corner.
Stepping a little bit wide through T12 there, and but he will get DRS from the back of the McLaren, which is quite handy, and that's what saved him in a way, isn't it, in Austin?
Yeah. Getting
DRS from a backman, Mick Schumacher at the time, wasn't it? And just helping him on his way. How intense is this?
That was Lando Norris then getting lapped, and in the process going into the points as Sebastian Vettel pits for a second time for Aston Martin. He's ahead of Kimi Raikkonen, and a long way ahead of Kimi Raikkonen. George Russell runs 13th at the moment. We've lost Ricciardo and we've lost Stroll. Alonso running a really good race here currently, and on a one-stop strategy, currently 7th on the standings, ahead of his Alpine teammate Esteban Ocon, and Pierre Gasly running for AlphaTauri. So it's a better weekend for Alpine in their battle with AlphaTauri.
This is the critical part. This is where Verstappen has been about a third of a second faster. That buys him the breathing space up the pit straight that he needs, because he's thick end of 20 kilometers per hour slower when Lewis is in his slipstream and with his DRS. There's quite a bit of battery play going on as well in terms of attack and defence.
It's a short lap here, Martin, and you're probably going to say no to this one. 14 laps to go. You're 40 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc. It's not working out for Mercedes at the moment. Do you stop Hamilton? He's going to breeze past Perez. He's going to let past Bottas.
I think he might breeze past Verstappen, frankly.
But let's see what happens here. But just wondering if it's not been working out. Do Mercedes try anything different? But it is working out at this moment in time. Verstappen is weaving all over the road, and he's going to force Hamilton wide again. And Hamilton can't quite get past on the entry into turn 4. Thought for one moment about the old switcheroo there. Forced Verstappen a little bit deeper. Cut through on the inside. Didn't happen for him, but he's got close again, and maybe it'll be third time lucky next time.
Yeah, he's not going to leave himself, Lewis Hamilton, exposed to a little trip towards the scenery.
Verstappen there, so desperate to break any slipstream that Hamilton was going to be getting, weaving from side to side to break that toe.
Yeah, and he will be told he can't do too much more of that, I'd imagine. You're not allowed to sweep. Of course, Hamilton wasn't alongside him, but you're not allowed to keep changing across the track relentlessly like that.
But Hamilton has stuck with him again on this particular lap, and it's the battle resumed as they go into turn 1, and Hamilton's gaining on Max Verstappen here. Couldn't pull the move off on Verstappen that he did on Lando Norris in the sprint yesterday. Norris didn't really fight that one, to be fair.
But he forced Max to go late into the corner, and he's got a better exit. Hamilton with a much better exit down to turn 4.
I said, is it third time lucky? Hamilton pulls ahead of Verstappen before they get to the corner. The crowd go absolutely wild. It is third time lucky for Lewis Hamilton. He was 20th and last on the grid for the sprint here on lap 59 of the Grand Prix. He has gone from last all the way to first. What a drive this has been from Lewis Hamilton this weekend. He has gained 9 places in the Grand Prix, now leads this Grand Prix, and Red Bull, who've thrown everything at Mercedes bar the kitchen sink this weekend, now have to try and find a way to get past them.
Yeah, so Lewis made Max defend tight down into turn 1. That left him out of shape in 2 and 3 and vulnerable down to turn 4. And of course he's got greater speed. Now it's Verstappen in the dirty air as well. So that is critical track advantage there.
We've seen Lewis Hamilton here at Interlagos before. Start 20th on the grid and finish 4th. We've seen him start 17th on the grid and finish 3rd. We're now seeing him lead the Grand Prix as Verstappen gets shown a black and white flag for weaving on the straight, and Toto Wolff takes out an awful lot of angst and frustration and starts to maybe smile, internally at least.
Yeah, as I was saying, you're not allowed to keep changing direction like that down the straight, but it doesn't really matter anymore, does it? In terms for Max Verstappen, because I don't think he'll hang on to the Mercedes now, travelling in its turbulent air. And Lewis Hamilton then has made his way, as you said, from the back of the grid to the front of absolutely everybody. Who's got fastest lap at the moment? Hamilton has. So it's a net 8 points he's got advantage.
There's fireworks going off in the grandstands. Was it Ricky Bobby says, if you ain't first, you're last? Well, he was last, and he ain't that anymore. He's now first, and he's now a second and a half ahead of Max Verstappen as we ride on board with Pierre Gasly. And Gasly's got Esteban Ocon in his sights. The two Frenchmen going to turn 1 together. They almost collide. And that, by the briefest of margins, was a lucky escape, I think, for both of them going into turn 1. Gasly makes his way up into 8th place, but they've both got DRS here, and Ocon is going to fight this one back again. Esteban Ocon's never scored a point here before. He has to yield and concede to Pierre Gasly into turn 4, and he will drop down to 9th place with his teammate now Fernando Alonso under pressure from the AlphaTauri.
Yeah, it's pretty scary stuff, isn't it, at the end of the straight? They're doing a couple of 100 miles an hour, and you can be so late on the brake. And then the corner cambers in nicely, really nicely indeed, and you can pick up some front grip.
Well, they like that down at AlphaTauri, and in such a close battle with Alpine in the championship. And don't forget, they both came into this race on 106 points.
Valtteri, go get him.
That'll do very nicely, I'm sure. Go get him, says Toto Wolff. He's about 9.5 seconds behind is Valtteri Bottas. He was half a second quicker than Max Verstappen on the previous lap as we watch now from the rear of Fernando Alonso's Alpine, and Gasly absolutely flying towards him. Here comes the gas man, and Fernando Alonso manages to stay ahead. Now, where does he point that Alpine to try and defend into Decido de Largo? He's not got DRS, Fernando Alonso, to help his battle. Gasly has, giving him an extra speed advantage. Gasly's going to go all the way around the outside and does so as behind we see Esteban Ocon in the background, currently in 9th place. Sorry, Martin.
Yeah, so Ocon's just been lapped by Hamilton.
Yeah, that's right.
That was the other car you could see there momentarily. And I'd be surprised if Bottas can catch Verstappen, but you're right, he's about a half second faster. There's not enough laps left, are there, in that respect, but he's dropped Perez by 4.8 seconds, has Valtteri Bottas, so it's a 1 and 3 for Mercedes, 2 and 4 for Red Bull. Critical in the Constructors' title too. Anthony, what can you tell us?
Just going back to that move from Gasly on Ocon. I know we're watching the other move here down in towards turn 4, but the move on Ocon, I wondered if he just didn't turn the car, like we were talking about with Max and the move on Lewis. And actually, now I could ride on board with Gasly and see that he did lock up, and he does turn the steering wheel a lot to try and make the corner. So that's what you're looking for, those little nuances from on board, and that's what we were missing in that. And the stewards would have been missing it as well. Nobody yet has seen that on-board shot from Max.
Hamilton then 3 seconds clear of Max Verstappen. What a Sao Paulo Grand Prix this has been so far. If you are just joining us, and people switch on all the time, and if you're watching in the UK, you're a Sky Glass or a Sky Q customer, press your red button. You can watch the highlights alongside the live action, and I hope you've all been enjoying the live action so far. Whoever you're rooting for, whoever you're cheering for, Verstappen fans, Hamilton fans, you know, we're just seeing a titanic battle this season. Some great stuff on the racetrack, and it's not often you see someone storming through the field in the way Lewis Hamilton has this weekend.
No, and the extra pain for Red Bull is when they fast forward now to Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, the last 3 Grand Prix. I think that straight line speed of the Mercedes will come in extremely handy into the final stages of this World Championship.
This title is not over yet. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
Yeah, loving it from down here. A couple of things from down here. Sebastian Vettel pitted for a second time a few laps ago while all that was going on with Hamilton and Verstappen. It's dropped him out of the points at the moment, but he's closing on Lando Norris. Maybe he'll get one at the end. Valtteri Bottas is closing down Max Verstappen, but only by a tenth or two a lap. So even though Toto Wolff might urge him on, Valtteri doesn't seem to have the pace in the car, same pace as Lewis. And I've got a reason for retirement for Daniel Ricciardo.
2 seconds.
It's a black and white flag for weaving on the straight.
Yeah, perfect. Say hi.
What did he say?
More sarcasm. Yeah, perfect. Say hi.
Say hi.
Why did Ricciardo retire?
Well, worryingly for Mercedes, it's a power loss. It seems to be a power unit issue. So, yeah, it's just had a loss of power and had to come in and retire the car with a Mercedes engine.
What's another one? And Mick Schumacher's just come into the pits. I don't know if that's a scheduled stop or we're going to see Mick retire from this race, but he was running 18th and last when he did. So, 9 places gained by Lewis Hamilton in this race. Nobody has ever won from lower than 8th here at Interlagos before. So Hamilton's going to go 2 better than Giancarlo Fisichella for Jordan back in 2003. And only 10 Grand Prix have ever been won from 10th on the grid. This will be the second of the last 9 races, because don't forget, Esteban Ocon won from 10th in Hungary as well. The sort of stats that, you know, keep me awake at night with a smile on my face. 10 races won from 10th on the grid. Yeah,
That's tempt me, Crofty. Tempt me to add to that comment.
Oh, that's a very good point, well made. That straight line advantage of Mercedes has now seen Hamilton extend it to 4.5 seconds. Once they get into clean air, that point you were making about that straight line speed, Martin, it very much comes to the fore. And well, Qatar's a nice flowing circuit that we've never raced on a course in Formula 1. Saudi is going to be high speed and never raced there either. And Abu Dhabi, with a few adjustments made to help overtaking for this year, we certainly hope. Has got a couple of very long straights there as well. Driver of the day, so far, third of the votes going Lewis Hamilton's way. 22% to Max Verstappen, still time to make the votes for your driver of the day.
It might be higher than that, but so Red Bull will be thinking to bring Sergio Perez in for a fresh set of tyres. They've got plenty of space behind him to steal that fastest lap point away from Mercedes-Benz and Lewis Hamilton. And then, of course, Mercedes might react to that. So Red Bull can only do it on literally for the last flying lap of the race. Otherwise, Mercedes will just react and do the same thing.
And there's no way that Valtteri Bottas will just peel in anyway, because he could well
give up third.
Yes, give up third, which is a bit of a silly thing to do when you're just chasing the 1 point. Lap 66, out of 71. Elsewhere in the field, just trying to look for the close battles. They're not really there at the moment. Antonio Giovinazzi about a second behind George Russell. Is he going to be racing for Alfa Romeo for next season? Not if you believe the photos that I saw of an Alfa Romeo dealer in Shanghai with a big poster of Guan Yu Zhou outside it, welcoming him to Formula One. That might have been a fake, but it certainly looked like it was a few days early if an announcement is going to be made. Hamilton locking up, going through the infield.
Actually ran a little bit wide, yeah, and got onto the slightly dirty part of the racetrack.
I saw a puff of smoke for a moment when I first saw it. He's got a comfortable lead though of 6 seconds now. His tyres 3 laps younger, of course, than Max Verstappen. What does a weekend like this do for Lewis Hamilton? When on Friday nights, you know, there's the chance that you're going to be sent to the back of the grid. It gets confirmed on Saturday, you know, and you end up winning the Grand Prix if that is to be the case.
I think they'll still be pretty miffed at Mercedes, because what he didn't do was get 3 points for winning the sprint yesterday. So they'll still think they might have, but you know, if they're very bruised about that rear wing. So we haven't seen it. We don't know anything about it still with the scrutineers. And but you know, I spoke to Toto on the grid, didn't I? He was shaking his head at the FIA, Nicholas Tombasses of the FIA, and carrying a lot of anger. Some of that will be gone, but as I said, they'll feel they still could have had another 3 points yesterday.
As it is coming down to the final 3 races, and every point you can pick up so precious as it stands. Max Verstappen, who has been a modicum of consistency. He really has finished first or second in 14 Grand Prix in 2021. Still leads the Drivers' Championship, is on for 15 races with a first or second place finish, and a lead which will be 13 points to take to Qatar in a week's time. Lewis Hamilton won, of course, his last race win was in Russia. That's his only race win since, you look at the season since the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. Mercedes desperately needed to bounce back and to hit the top. They couldn't do it in Mexico. Red Bull very much had the pace there. Couldn't do it in Austin either, in their own backyard, so to speak. But here at Interlagos, Hamilton's channeled his inner centre a little bit this weekend, racing aggressively, racing hard, and racing to win too. 3 laps to go. Ted, down to you.
Well, Ayrton was always Lewis's hero, wasn't he, growing
Exactly.
up? That's why he coloured his crash helmet in the Senna yellow, as well as so Anthony Hamilton, his dad, could keep an eye on Lewis when they're at the kart tracks.
2 seconds, Ted.
Where's Valtteri?
Valtteri, P3.
Good job.
I don't know if Valtteri's still sort of sore about whatever that strategy call that he felt he disagreed with. Maybe Valtteri felt they should have tried the 1-stop, but that was never really on today, was it, Crofty? So I don't know what Valtteri really meant. Mercedes, crucially, they're the ones who don't really know what Valtteri meant by we threw away a 1-2 today, guys. But in any case, we move on. Just a quick line about Pierre Gasly. He reported that he didn't have any downshifts on his gearbox. That, I believe, has now been sorted out. And I'm just wondering whether they're having hold station at Ferrari. That 2-stop has been okay for both Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. 3 seconds between the 2 Ferraris, and they're just holding station to the end of the race.
Well, it's been another decent points haul for Ferrari since they brought their engine upgrade to the track a few races ago. They've looked to have the nod very much on McLaren.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that looks like they've got that one covered now, doesn't it, Ferrari? I'm just watching what they'll do with Perez at Red Bull. He's only 3.1 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas, but you're getting close to the point where if you want to pit him and go for fastest lap, you need to do it any time about now. So
guess what they're doing with Sergio Perez, Martin? Yeah. it's almost like you've got an inner sixth sense link to the Red Bull strategy team.
Telepathetic.
Soft tires go on for Sergio Perez. It's a bid then for the fastest lap in this race, which at the moment is held by Lewis Hamilton. So it not only, if Perez succeeds, gives Red Bull an extra point in their Constructors' Championship battle, but it does take a point away from Lewis Hamilton, and that gives Max Verstappen an extra point advantage then at the top of the Drivers' Championship. So Perez is doing his bit for his teammate, whilst out on track, Hamilton has been doing his bit for team and for himself this weekend. When he finally retires from this sport, we'll have a very lengthy chat about the great weekends that Lewis Hamilton has had in Formula One, and I think this weekend on track will occupy a lot of that chat.
Surely one of the most satisfying for him, against all odds, really, isn't it? Against all odds, stayed out of trouble with 2 out of position grid slots and basically passed a lot of them.
It's going to be
twice, some of them.
Exactly. His 175th start then for Mercedes. It's going to be the 58th win for Hamilton or for Bottas as for teammates. That actually matches the F1 record of Schumacher and Barrichello from those glory Ferrari years. The fireworks are going off early here because Hamilton is still only at Ferradura, the horseshoe. He's not gone to victory yet. He's a very popular driver in these parts. They love their racing drivers at Interlagos, and they'll have loved what they've seen here this weekend. Hamilton making up 15 places in the sprint, making up 9 places in the Grand Prix itself. A great on-track tussle with Max Verstappen. He eventually managed to get past the Red Bull. Brazil, a brilliant motorsport nation. The entire nation of Brazil has given us 101 race winners in Formula One. Lewis Hamilton now has the checker flag in sight for his 101st win. Hamilton, against the odds, has come home to win the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. What a victory for Lewis Hamilton. He's not ready to loosen his grip on that championship trophy. Not just yet. And with 3 races to go, is it very much game on back at the top? Max Verstappen, for the 15th race in 2021, occupies the top 2 spots. Valtteri Bottas comes home to finish on the podium, and we look to see what Sergio Perez is doing in the middle sector. He's gone purple. He's going for that fastest lap as Hamilton celebrates the race win. Red Bull still trying to take a point away from him.
And he looks like he could well be doing that, climbing the hill then towards the line. He was 4th, he remains 4th, but he goes fastest with a 1:11.0.
And that gives Red Bull an extra point in the Constructors' Championship. Perez an extra point in the Drivers' Championship and takes a point away from Lewis Hamilton in his battle with Max Verstappen. Only the top 2 could become Drivers' Champion in 2021 as it now stands. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, great weekend for Ferrari, 5th and 6th. Pierre Gasly, 7th for AlphaTauri. Dropped places yesterday in the sprint.
Yeah, boy! That's how you do it, man. That is how you do it.
Woo! Yes! Come on, guys! Thank you so much. Such great work. Let's keep going. Let's keep pushing. Great points, team.
Yeah, mate. We are on it.
Lewis, that is how you overcome a 20-place disqualification.
It's actually 25, but you're right.
It was 25, you're right.
And he picks up the Brazilian flag from the marshal, Lewis Hamilton, and I'm sure the crowd will love that as much as they've loved the action here today. As I say, Gasly dropped points in the sprint, places in the sprint yesterday, but held on to 7th place today, ahead of Ocon and Alonso, scoring double points for Alpine. Lando Norris on his birthday weekend gets the final points place. He was a second ahead of Sebastian Vettel at the end. And as I said a few moments ago, whoever you're rooting for in the championship, do not deny that this has been a magnificent Herculean effort from Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton this weekend to pick up this victory. It will go down as one of the great Formula One victories of all time.
No doubt about that. Yep, kept a smile on his face despite all the trials and tribulations, and as he calculates 25-place grid drop over the 2 days. And yeah, well won. Very well won.
Nicely done, Max. Nicely done. P2, mate. Solid point.
Yeah, mate. I tried everything I could, but we were just not quick enough. But still good points.
Great effort, Max. You gave it everything, and damage limitation. So Checo's just nicked the fastest lap back off Lewis as well.
Yeah, good job.
The fact is that Mercedes seem to have a car going into the final half a furlong that could be faster than the Red Bull, who have been faster at other stages.
Well, if Red Bull think that Mercedes are up to something, they're going to have to protest that now, aren't they? They're going to have to come out and go, OK, right, we want this checked. We'll see. But Mercedes seem entirely comfortable that their car complies in every way.
But if you do design a good car, you need a pretty decent star to make the best of it, and star billing. And 10 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton this weekend. He really has proved just why he holds all those records for most wins, podiums, you name it, he's on top. But he is level with Michael Schumacher at 7 world titles. He doesn't want to give up his opportunity to win an 8th world title and become the greatest of all time, without doubt, statistically, because people will always have their own favourite. But statistically, he won't want to give up that grip just yet. He is highly motivated for the rest of this season to come.
Surprised there a bit, because they obviously want to tighten up Parc Fermé rules after Max got a €50,000 fine for touching Lewis's car. And I thought they might be tightening the entire procedure up, actually, in Parc Fermé, where you're not allowed to touch anything, anybody, until you've been weighed, basically.
Do you know what, though? Try taking that flag away from Lewis Hamilton and try denying the celebrations. Don't want to see drivers going up to other cars that aren't their own and touching those. That will be more heavily policed from now on in. But after such a hard-fought weekend, denying sporting stars the chance to celebrate.
I know it. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Don't want to say that.
We were talking about tightening up, retightening up Pot Fermé. The clue's in the name. But Lewis, remembering that, he needs to reapply steering wheel.
Yes, these are little procedures that need to be done. Hamilton, Verstappen and Bottas for the first time in third races. Sergio Perez didn't end up on the podium. Felipe Massa, though, is talking to the top three.
Hi Max, really congratulations for the race. On my view, had a fantastic race, fighting until the end. Maybe it was missing a little bit in terms of the pace, so what to tell for all of us here?
Yeah, I mean, we tried everything we could today, of course. I think it was a good battle, but of course at the end we just missed a little bit of pace, but we gave it all today, and it was a lot of fun.
Congratulations, I think it was really nice race to watch, and especially this battle. So what do you think for the next race? Ready to fight until the end like you show here?
Yeah, I mean, we still have a good points lead, you know, so today was a bit of damage limitation on a weekend where it was a bit difficult for us, but, you know, I'm confident that the coming races, you know, will bounce back.
Congratulations. Hi, Valtteri. Start yesterday was fantastic. Maybe a little bit different today, especially in the first corner by being a little bit, you know, on the outside. And also, you know, when I saw you braking for corner 4, maybe the grip was not 100% there from the track, I would say. So can you explain your race for us today?
Yeah, the start was quite tricky. I'm disappointed with the start, but and the first lap, but I tried. But afterwards, yeah, the pace was actually quite okay. I thought we could have done one stop quite easily, but we decided to stop. But yeah, I'm glad we could get more points than Red Bull, and Lewis had an amazing drive today. I think he was on his own league today.
And do you think maybe the virtual safety car was a little help also to pass Checo as well?
Yeah, the VSC was in a good place for me for once, so I was happy with that. And but yeah, I mean, still solid points.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Lewis, it's very difficult, you know, to do the question for you. You are not. Can you hear? You are not the driver of the day. You are the driver of the weekend. So yesterday, what you did was just incredible. And I don't know, but I saw your face after the race yesterday, and today, what you give, you know, fighting and overtaking, and also for the people. Really, for me, you were the driver of the weekend. And did you feel anything different with the Brazilian people supporting you 100% from yesterday? So can you please tell us what you think?
I appreciate that, dude. And firstly, now I know, I think I feel what it was like for you here with all the support in 2007 with your amazing country. I'm so grateful for the incredible support I've had this weekend. I've not had it since like Silverstone was when I had my own, a good group of support. But since then, it's been really difficult, you know? So to hear these throughout the weekend has been really humbling, and yeah, I've been saying like obrigado Brazil. I'm so grateful. As I said, what a race. The team did an amazing job. Valtteri did a great job today to get as many points as possible. So yeah, I mean, I was pushing, you know how it is, just pushing as hard as I could. But from last on the grid and then another 5-place penalty was, I think, the hardest weekend I've had. But my dad said, he reminded me of 2004 when I was in Formula 3 in Bahrain, and I started last, and I finished 10th, and then I finished first. So yeah, this one's for my dad.
Well, also, can you just tell about the overtaking? And also, what do you think for the next race? You think this was an extra help for you to fight for the championship? and nothing to lose?
I mean, coming into this weekend, I never ever thought that we would be able to close the gap like we have today. And then these things that just kept going against us. But I think it really shows just, and for everyone, just never give up, whatever you're facing. You just got to keep pushing, keep tumbling away, keep fighting, and never, never stop fighting. And that's really how I've kind of approached this weekend. Inspiration from all around, but it feels like the first, because I don't feel like I had a win for a long time. So
really, from my side, congratulations. Really, really amazing job.
Felipe Massa with the interview questions down in Parc Fermé. The crowd allowed to come out onto the track to stand underneath the podium. What a podium it is, and Felipe Massa knows all too well what it's like to stand out in front of the Paulistas and celebrate a race victory here as they shout the name of Lewis Hamilton after a Sao Paulo Grand Prix that sees him take victory. 10 seconds, 10.5 seconds, the margin over Max Verstappen by the time they crossed the line, the checkered flag. Valtteri Bottas coming home third, his second podium in the last 5 races, ahead of Sergio Perez, who gets the fastest lap points. And his 210th start today matches Gerhard Berger for all-time race starts. Berger was the first ever Red Bull sponsored driver in Formula 1 history. Leclerc and Sainz, Gasly, Ocon, Alonso and Norris completing the top 10. We lost Daniel Ricciardo with a power unit issue. Lance Stroll with